the haircut, Blake.
Thanks, man.
You didn't get one. You did, right?
I did. I felt like I needed to change something up in my life, and so I cut it all off and then doing something different.
You should have like me.
Should have completely swung the pendulum.
Yeah. We can really lean into what everyone's already probably thinking, you know?
That's right. I was playing. Have you seen any of the Agatha All Along? You know what I'm talking about? It's like a new series on Marvel or Disney Plus.
Heard of it, but I don't.
She's like a witch, like Scarlet Witch. And it's like your stereotypical witch and coven and Wiccan, you know, stuff. And but it's actually really good. I've been watching it. And the main song is like, it's called The Witch's Road Ballad or something. It's all about being a witch. And sorry. I think it's so catchy. So I've been playing it all the time and like Walt singing it. And I played it this morning and Taylor's like, this is a great song for today. You know, just to confirm to everybody else that we are a cult. And she's getting Louis to sleep, I reckon. Because it's time for him to take a nappy. You're about to go to the kids in just a second, okay? See yourself in it? Hey. You want to say something? Is that you? Applesauce. Alright, let's go. We may be going to kids in a second, okay? Nice.
I'm reading every single one. We're reading all of them. That's right. It's better. She's like, look, we can be famous.
You are. You want to see it?
Okay?
Sorry, just kidding. You're not on TV.
When we need her to chill out, we start because we have multiple years. And she's gone. She's just sad that I would get
And I was like, we'll try it. So I got like flavor out.
my hair changes. I'm good for it. Yeah. The hair thing was unexpected to me. I didn't expect my hair to change.
Well, I didn't expect
I expected
yeah, I didn't expect
Yeah. Are y'all talking about pregnancy?
Yes. I curled it yesterday.
Weird thing.
One side of it, I finished curling it, and by the time I was done and starting the next side, it was completely flat. And I was like,
Drew wrecked my face. I love it. Wrecked my face.
Yeah.
I was like, why?
why? What is happening?
It's weird. I was like, I expected to see it turn, but like,
Yeah, which is that doesn't even make sense.
it's weird.
Well, my skin like got really crazy dry after I had it. Every time I wash and then didn't make it work.
Yeah.
I was like, what is happening? But I was like, it's like sandpaper.
It's weird. They complete all this.
They do.
Stuff.
They're
just like, I'm taking them all.
They literally suck you dry. We
Yeah,
love
they
them.
do. We love them. We love sucky dry.
But they suck you dry. Like, they're cute.
Hey everybody, welcome. How you guys doing? Happy fall day. Very fall. Yesterday was weird. When we were carving pumpkin, it was like we carved pumpkins yesterday, and it like was super hot at like 3 o'clock. 10 minutes later, it got real gloomy. Started pouring the rain. 20 minutes later, got hot again. Then got cold.
Did it storm at your house?
It rained repeatedly
Like
outside.
lightning and thunder did our house. I know.
Really? It rained a lot because.
Yeah, it was.
So, is this a good time to talk about how the government's controlling the weather?
Yes, there's a lot of like it's become a theory now because a few people started it, and then now there's like a mob of people thinking that the government controls the weather.
I mean, that's what Abby's. Are you teaching?
I'm
That's what Abby's
hey,
talking about
we're-
today.
This is a perfect lead.
So, yeah, that was Abby's talking point today. We're talking about conspiracy theories today.
No, that's actually Andy's talking.
Listening to conspiracy theories.
Actually, we actually do have an extra week, and next week. So, are you guys not here next week, or is it? Dang it, that was gonna be Andy's week. Is
Oh wow.
conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories you should believe in. We'll just do that. All right, I'm gonna read something for us. I'm gonna play some music, read something for us, and it's a story from a book I'm reading called The Great Search. I think I've talked about it before, but it's by a guy named John Philip Newell, and he talks about how we're in a season of human existence. He calls it the Great Search because people are largely searching for something. And anyways, but he talks about Martin Buber, who we talked about a week ago, 2 weeks ago. I can't remember now. But anyways, I want to share a story from him, and then I'm going to play another song for us, and then we'll name the good. So let me play this real quick. All right, take the time however you need. Let's just sit in the song for a second, and I'm going to read this over us, and I'm going to play another song for us. So. All right, Martin Buber, one of the greatest Jewish teachers of the 20th century, profoundly addressed yearning in his writings. The world, he says, is lit by eternity. It is lit from within. The light of the divine can be looked for everywhere, in every moment, and deep within every encounter and relationship of life. Many years ago, I met a Jewish man who had grown up in a Hasidic community in New York City. When he was young, it had been his custom to go to a camp for Jewish boys every summer, just up from the Hudson River. He shared an experience of one of those summers that changed his life. Word got around the camp one day that the much-loved rabbi of their community was visiting and wanted to meet the boys at the stream that ran through the center of the camp. The boys rushed along the banks of the stream looking for the rabbi. When they found him, he was standing in the flowing water, praying, rocking back and forth in that form of the Hasidic prayer, sometimes called the one-pointed concentration, seeking the presence of God at the heart of the moment. The boys entered the stream with the rabbi, and he said just one thing to them. The water that we see flowing past us now will never flow past us again. He then returned to his rocking movement of prayer, and the boys joined him, swaying back and forth in mantric motion together. But the combination of flowing waters and the rocking movement of prayer put the boy to sleep. When he woke, all the other boys were away, but the rabbi, still standing and praying in the flowing water, was now steadying the boy with one arm around his back. This time, the rabbi didn't say anything to him, but simply leaned forward and smiled into his eyes. In the rabbi's face, the young boy glimpsed the countenance of the divine. This was a moment of grace that he cherished for the rest of his life. It led him to be looking for the presence of God in every human face, in every form, and in every moment. That was really beautiful. Let me pray, and then I'm going to play another song for us. God, we're here. We're yours. We're seeking to be present to this moment. Whatever that moment is, to the people around us, to the world around us, I pray that we can hear and see well, knowing that all that really matters is this present moment. And I pray that we can see that all of life, everything around us is lit with eternity. And I pray that if anything, that just causes us to lean in. I pray these things in your name. Amen. Got something else for you guys. After this, we'll name the good together.
Is this the resurrection or is it a letdown? Is the kingdom of heaven more than a ghost town? Is there something further in, or only a way out? 'Cause if eternal life's worth living, shouldn't it start now? If eternal life's worth living, shouldn't it start now? So I'm living like a dead man, I'm haunted by a ghost. I'm torn between the temple walls and reaching for a rope. I'm buried like a body in this God-forsaken ground. So if eternal life's worth living, shouldn't it start now? If eternal life's worth living, shouldn't it start now? So let silence sound like thunder, let mercy come and flood, let justice flow like water, let the rivers turn to blood, let the ancient be the young, let the humble be proud, 'cause if eternal life's worth living, shouldn't it start now? If eternal life's worth living, shouldn't it start now?
Yeah, it's Thomas Austin. He's one of the few regularly Christian artists that I'll listen to, and I've shared a lot of my beef with a lot of stuff like that. But his stuff is legitimately good, and like he's really thoughtful. And I've messaged him back and forth a couple times on Instagram, and he's just a really down to earth dude. And anyways, so feel free to check him out. His name is Thomas Austin, and he has a good handful of songs that are incredible. Yeah, there's that. So we can name the good together. What you've seen and tasted and experienced, you're trying to hold on to right now. Something I'm trying to regularly do, something I'm doing right now is making a practice of writing it down of the things I'm holding on to or trying to hold on to. And that's been really helpful for me. So whatever it is, an idea or a person or a moment or something you're tasting and seeing, however you want to name it, what are you trying to hold on to?
I feel like we had a really good family day yesterday, which felt nice because it felt like a little bit of normalcy. And I don't know, I feel like this fall we've been kind of because we haven't been doing the fall things that we love to do, and vendors is not really there anymore, and so that's usually a fall thing we do. And so it was fun to just get to feel like yesterday was a really good fall family day. And the trees are just giving me life right now. I feel like
Yeah.
so pretty.
Okay. Yesterday was a fall day. Felt like it. And today. I haven't really done any Halloween stuff. Me and Taylor were walking through Target yesterday and looked at Halloween decorations. And I was like, oh, it's this.
Rosie came in with good. She went and got candy for Kevin to have for work.
We got candy for Kevin and
Yeah, you can have one. So we would get all this candy for him to pass out to customers and stuff. And we were looking for a Halloween bag for her. Because last year she was big enough. And instead what we found is a bowl. It looks like a cat. And so she just wants to keep it. We got it so Kevin could use that bowl at work to put the candy in. But this morning, it was raining last night when we left Target, so I put the bowl over her head because we didn't have a rain jacket. So this morning on the way to church, she held her key cat the whole way until we gave her a biscuit and put it on her head and was just talking to herself and was just being. So it's very sweet how happy she gets about cats. It was dogs for a long time and now it's cats. And my mom and dad have an orange cat named Maggie. And so now every cat that she sees is Maggie. And so she has cat slippers that my mom got her and she has to wear them everywhere. It's we have to sneak them off of her. But it's just really sweet because she's for her, the coolest thing in her world is when she sees a cat somewhere. So
that's fun.
Just a fun age.
Y'all can come Halloween at our house at Innovations Neighborhood. Tons of candy, and Drew's got his big display out. So if anybody needs a neighborhood, y'all come on over to the Gilbert.
Nice.
Yeah. And it's not scary.
If anyone wants to do a fun get together on Halloween, I think that would be really fun.
I would love it, yeah, because I feel like we don't live in a neighborhood, and I'm always I didn't grow up celebrating Halloween. So
wow.
I'm literally living vicariously through myself.
She would be destined to go to hell.
Right.
We dress up as Bible characters.
Yeah, that's right. You spin it and make it Christian, but you're still dressing up for stuff, yeah.
And it wasn't even on Halloween.
Fall festival, yeah.
But I'm totally living through Rosie. For sure.
So what's Rosie being?
So he's gonna be Sully. I'm gonna be Wazowski because I have a shirt for my stomach, and then she's gonna be Boo.
Very sweet.
Drama Boo. It's very cute.
That's so cute.
What?
We tried to find a Randall costume for Motzi.
Oh yeah,
We-
that'd been awesome.
But no, she watched Monsters Inc. and like for a week it was boo, boo, boo. So. But it was too perfect. My look off this round.
That's perfect.
Shirt, round. Great. Perfect.
I did see an Instagram reel at some point this week. Not to deep dive into the oblivion, but the lady was like, "My family doesn't choose to celebrate Halloween. We just, on our own, get dressed up and we go around to people that we know and we exchange candy." It's just like, that's Halloween.
That's called Halloween.
You can choose not to observe it.
That's fun.
A wild thing. I have seen stuff like that where it's like, we don't celebrate this, but and I'm like,
We're gonna do all the things.
That's the
we're
same
doing
thing.
this, we're doing the same
Yeah.
thing, and I'm celebrating.
Or trunk or treat. You guys remember trunk or treat?
Our
That's
church
still,
didn't do
that's still a
that.
definite thing.
Still a thing.
They did last night.
Last night
Oh yeah,
Trunk or treat.
at our grandparents' church.
yeah, trunk or treat.
There's on our way here, we passed a funeral home and they're doing the trick or treat.
Yes, I know, and I was
That
like,
feels
I don't think I
odd.
can do that. Yeah, that.
It's just coffins. Casket.
That feels
Yeah,
wrong.
that's a real trick or treat. You open up a casket. It could be candy.
It could be a body. It's literally a game.
Real
Funeral
baskets.
skeletons.
That's
That's fun.
I'm glad you said that though, Avery, because when I saw that sign, I was like, I don't know about this.
Yeah.
Here's the memories promised regardless.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
I'm like, people agreed to that.
They did.
They-
They said
people-
we should do
People
this.
said
Yeah.
we as a funeral home should do this.
Yes.
Yeah, there was a meeting and they said,
Yeah.
let's do this. This is a great idea.
Not ironically, so it seems.
But then I had this thought was, what if they're just trying to reach out to the community because they have, nobody wants to go to funeral.
Right.
And that might be their way to say, we're in the community. And we're gonna
It is quite,
That is another perspective.
that is another perspective. That is for sure.
Their thoughts behind it. I did believe there had to be some good intention.
What if like you as a family decided to do the funeral home and you had to tell people that? It's like, oh, we're actually going to a funeral home for Halloween.
Sorry, you're doing what?
Just hit all the places. I mean, there's 20,000 churches that are doing things. And go to every fall festival and trunk or treat.
We'll have a conversation.
No, everyone. I know it's fake. Everyone knows it's fake. They're okay.
What else?
I had there's a guy that I follow on YouTube who makes YouTube shorts and just funny stuff, and he made a video being like how people think a depressed person is versus how they actually are, and he on the like how people think it is, it was just showing him, like by himself alone, like sort of crying, whatever. Yeah, it's video, but and then the second part was like how depressed people actually are, and it was showing him like just acting like quote unquote normal, just like with friends, and just like to the point where they would never even know that he was depressed. So and it was a lot of people were like, it was relatable for a lot of people. And it came out, when I watched it, it had came out like an hour ago. And I was like, well, I'm going to write a comment basically explaining how this short is very relatable and true. And I wrote a whole entire like paragraph or whatever. And I think at the moment because on YouTube you can like other people's comments, and I think mine has like 200 at the moment. And I got people saying like, there's so many people in the comments. A few replied to me and stuff, just saying like most people are like, turn to God for real. Like that's the best way to go in those situations. But Yeah, pretty much. I didn't explain it as well as it happened, but
That's cool.
I tried
That's
to.
really cool. Yeah.
In the comment, he explained it really well too. When he's kind of
Yeah, that's cool.
Through.
Cause like for all those people to see that like that, like it's gotta impact you in some way to click like. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool. Anything else?
I don't know if you'd really call it like name the good. I don't really know what to call it, but I've had like it sounds like very full of myself, but I've had just like a lot of success in general lately. And I'm thankful for that. But on the flip side of that, like behind closed doors and specifically spiritually, I guess, if you want to put it like that, it just feels like I don't really deserve those things. And so like I'm thankful for all the things that are going right, because it's like I don't want to discard that, but also like it's hard to be like I don't deserve this, or people think that I'm better than what I really am, and it's I don't know really what to do with it, because like it's upsetting, but also like I said, I mean like I feel joyful because I'm like, well, this is something you've been working on and people are starting to notice that, or like, you know, just, and it's hard because it's like in some areas I'm doing so well, and in some areas I'm not, and it's just like kind of like a pendulum sometimes, like it just swings emotionally. So I mean, like I said, name the abstract weird feeling is what I'm gonna call it, I guess. So yeah, I don't know. It's just being thankful for that, but also acknowledging that there is still work to do, and there's probably some things left over from when I was younger that are leading to guilt and things like that. Especially just like, you know, the way the church teaches things. It's like, you know, to be successful, you have to be right with God. And if you're not with God, then that success is world oriented, and it will eventually lead to, you know, like one day you're gonna wake up and everyone's gonna die, and you're gonna lose all your money, and all your happiness is gonna be gone. It's like some of that stuff sticks with you.
Oh yeah.
And it's just don't really know what to do with it. So
Yeah, they bring stuff like that hard, really down sometimes.
Honestly, I think it's very normal.
Yeah,
I've felt
me
like
too.
that. Like, I don't know what you do with it, but I think it's very normal to feel that way. Especially when you think of like how you said, like how you grew up, and then it's like one day, I don't know, it's almost hard to accept that, oh, this is good, and this is, it's just good. It can just be good. It's a hard, weird place.
Yeah.
So don't know what to do with it, but I feel you. And
That's good.
it's normal. Okay.
Probably a similar emotion to like imposter syndrome, which I deal with a lot, where it's like even when I'm at operator meetings now, I'm like, I don't belong here. I'm like, I don't own business. This is wrong. But yeah, it's like the success probably feels weird, but it's deserved. Like you may not feel like you deserve it, but if you earned it, you deserve it. Kind of thing.
Which is that's how I tried to think about it, because like I don't know, I think a lot about how people are like, oh, I'm not giving my 100%, but like, I mean, we talk a lot about social media today, but I saw something that's like, if your 100% is 10%, then that is your 100%, and it's like, I feel like I'm giving all that I can give, and even though that's not a lot, it's kind of like that is being acknowledged. Maybe not specifically through the success, but it's like I see that you're trying your hardest, and even though that that's not a lot, like that's still worth it, and it's comforting. But I mean, again, there's the guilt associated with it. It's like, could I be giving more? Am I doing the best I can? I know logically in my head that like the whole point of the love of God is that like when you fall short, He will meet you there, and it's like logically I can explain that to myself, but it's hard to, I guess, emotionally process that, which is just who I am as a person. I can logically explain a lot of things, but then when it comes to like digesting that emotionally, it's like, you know, I can't do that. And I don't know. It's just a lot of emotions mixed with I'm tired and a busy week, and it's just like I want to sleep for 7 days. And,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
I think the other side of the coin of that is like when things go wrong, or when I was growing up, things go wrong, I would associate that with, well, I must be doing something wrong. Like I brought shame to
Yeah.
God or something, or God's mad at me, or he's gonna like this is the punishment for my wrongdoing. And so I was just talking to Abby about that a couple weeks ago, just reflecting back on like our stuff with Drew and stuff over the past year. I was like, man, if I had held on to that mindset this past year, it would have been,
Yeah.
I would have assumed that God's going to just kill us.
Yeah.
And, maybe we had just done something so enormously wrong, we can never be forgiven. And just how thankful I am, maybe that, God just redirected some of that to more what I would call healthy
Sure.
outlooks on all that stuff, and not feeling like everything move I make or action I take is somehow indicative of how God feels or what action is going to cause. To as a result of that. So, but yeah, it's really hard for us to tie up our actions to how God perceives us and feels about us.
Yeah.
It's hard to get past that, especially when you're told that stuff.
We should just name the good, name the abstract things you're feeling. Because if we're honest, it's like they very rarely are things all good or all bad. So name the abstraction that you're wrestling with. Anything else? All right, Abby. All yours.
Stack of books.
If it were possible, I would take a library
Yeah, there's plenty of
everywhere.
We have some
I feel like I'm inviting you into my little quiet space because I sit by the window, a three glass pane window, to do my time with the Lord, and I have stacks of books just all around. And a dog usually, so it's I don't know if I'm supposed to be in front of this thing. Where'd Blake go?
Yeah.
That freaks me out, to be honest with you. All right. Today we're going to talk about listening to God in community, missions, and nature. So we'll try not to let that be too long because we could probably do a whole Sunday on each of those. But if you have a Bible, I'm going to need your help, or your phone or whatever. So we're going to do a little bit of a Bible drill today. Starting in Luke. So we're going to sit there to begin with, Luke 2. And I'm going to ask a few of you, if you feel up to it, to read, just so it's not me talking so much and just to kind of get us off on the right foot. But I really appreciate Blake giving me the opportunity to talk about these things because they're all near and dear to my heart, as I'm sure they are to you too. But community, missions, and nature, and kind of springboarding off of our Name the Good conversation. When you've come through, I don't know if you want to use the word deconstruction, but when you've come through faith shifting, maybe, sometimes when you look at your community or you look at how to deal with missions, or even nature, but I think especially the first two, we bring a lot of, this is what we were supposed to do. People a lot of times were projects, or that's how I interpreted the asks. And it was like, what am I doing in my community? What am I doing for the needy? What am I doing for missions? How many people did I talk to this week? What were the conversations? Did I sell them on the gospel? It was almost just like this, and maybe this was self-inflicted, this oppressive, you are supposed to do these things in order to find favor with God. And if you didn't, something must be wrong with you. And Andy and I talk about that a lot still, like, especially like he works for a mission organization. And as we were coming through deconstruction and talking about our Hindu neighbor and going to the nations, we're like, are we doing the right things? What does God want in this? And I don't have any of those answers, to be honest with you. That's why I kind of liked this topic, because I've had to dig a little bit more and I still don't have the answers. And if I ever do have the answers, I'm probably wrong. But I think what this had me do is get a little bit closer, hopefully, to the heart of God and not look at so much at what men in history have told us, but maybe just look at the life of Jesus and see how he did it. So that's all I have to offer today. And we can maybe just walk through that together. And then if we have time, hopefully we can discuss some of what you guys know about these topics, because like I said, I'm absolutely no authority. So we're going to talk about first how to listen to God about your community and in your community. And for that, I was like, I still don't have this down right, because when I think about community, it's a broad topic. I think, do I get involved with local politics? Do I get to know my neighbor better? Do I find the homeless people and feed them? And the answer is probably yes. And in some instances, probably no. Like, some of those are very comfortable to me. Like, I would much rather go talk to my neighbor that I don't know than go work at a homeless shelter, as bad as that sounds. But Andy flip-flopped that. So like, what do we do as individuals and as Mosaic to like tend to our community as Jesus would? So let's look at what Jesus did. If you're in Luke, some of these are just one verse. So if you're, and I want you to be looking at the thread of how Jesus communicates. Luke 2, verse 46, if somebody has that. And if somebody can flip over to Luke 4, because that's where we're going next. Luke 2, 46.
After 3 days, they found him in the temple courts, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking questions.
Okay, so that one's easy. He was in the synagogue. He was in the temple. He was listening. He was asking questions. Somebody read Luke 4:1.
And Jesus, full of the Holy Spirit, returned from the Jordan and was led by the Spirit in the wilderness.
All right, so Jesus is full of the Holy Spirit. He's going to the wilderness. Verse 14, chapter 4.
And Jesus returned in the power of the Spirit to Galilee, and a report about him went out throughout all the surrounding country.
Okay, so he's been in the wilderness. He's come out. He's now going back in the city. Verse 16. Chapter 4. We're still in chapter 4 for a while. Sorry.
When he went to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, on the Sabbath, he went to the synagogue as usual. He stood up and read.
So he went back to his hometown. He went back to the synagogue on the Sabbath day. Somebody read verses 31 through 37. A little bit more of a chunk there.
Same chapter.
Yep.
So he went down to Capernaum, a town of Galilee, and on the Sabbath he began to teach the people. They were amazed at his teaching because he spoke with authority. Now in the synagogue there was a man who had the spirit of an unclean demon, and he cried out with a loud voice, leave us alone, Jesus the Nazarene. Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God. But Jesus rebuked him. Silence, come out of him. Then after the demon threw the man down in their midst, he came out of him without hurting him. They were all amazed, began to say to one another, what happened again? For with authority and power he commands the unclean spirits, and they come out. So the news about him spread into all areas of the region.
In verse 38, right after.
We'll just keep going. After Jesus left the synagogue, he entered into Simon's house. Now Simon's mother-in-law was suffering from a high fever, and they asked Jesus to help her.
So in those two instances, he's going to one city, he's healing someone of a demon, and then he's going to somebody's house, he's healing someone that's sick. I'll read verses 42 through 44. And it was that day he departed and went into a desolate place, and the people sought him and came to him, and he would have kept him from leaving them, but he said to them, I must preach the good news of the kingdom of God to the other towns as well, for I was sent for this purpose. And he was preaching in the synagogues of Judea. If you go on through Luke and obviously the rest of the Gospels, you'll see like in chapter 5, the crowds are going to press in on him, and he's going to get into a boat and he's going to go out. He's still going to speak to them, but then after he speaks to them, he's going to sit down, he's going to call his disciples. So he's going to make that crowd a little bit smaller. In verses 12 through 15 of chapter 5, he goes into another city. There's a man with leprosy. He heals him. And then right after that, he withdraws to desolate places. So if you look at your life in the span of a week or a month, and you look at Jesus's life in the span of whatever time we have now, not that you're supposed to compare and just beat yourself up, but what are your rhythms? He was in the community. He was obviously listening to them, listening to their needs. Then in order to do that, sometimes he would have to go to those desolate places. He had to get quiet. So if you run pell-mell into the community and just serve like crazy, you're eventually probably going to burn out. You might not even be doing the right type of work if you're not listening to Jesus first. So when we come to asking God about listening and mission, community, nature, whatever, it all starts with listening to God. And Jesus had a little bit of a leg up on us. He was God. But we have access to him easily. Where did Jesus listen? So again, I don't want you to read forever and ever and ever. But in Luke 5:33, he starts getting questions about fasting, questions about healing on the Sabbath. And he entertains those questions. He entertains the Pharisees. He entertains his disciples talking to him and saying, well, what about this? And what about this? And as you know, they say things like, teach me to pray, things of that nature. Jesus is always listening. And then this is probably my favorite story in the gospel. Let me read it to you real quickly. This is Luke 7:6-10. And Jesus went with them. When he was not far away from the house, the centurion sent friends saying to him, Lord, do not trouble yourself, for I am not worthy to have you come under my roof. Therefore, I do not presume to come to you, but say the word and let my servant be healed. There's a centurion. He has a servant that is near death. For I am a man set under authority with soldiers under me. And I say to one, go, and he goes, and to another, come, and he comes, and to my servant, do this, and he does it. When Jesus heard these things, he marveled at him. And turning to the crowd that followed him, said, I tell you, not even in Israel have I found such faith. And when those who had been sent returned to the house, they found the servant well. Jesus listened to the centurion. So he's listening to people from all walks of life. And I think that's critical too. He's listening to disciples that are followers. He's listening to Pharisees, and he's listening to people just in service to the community. So with all that being said, I think one of the ways that we can listen to our community is slow down. At the beginning of your week, maybe somewhere on the Sabbath today, you sit and say, Lord, how do I listen to my community this week? Is it at work? Yes. Is it at school? Yes. Is it walking down a neighborhood street and seeing your neighbor blowing their leaves and having a conversation? Yes, it can be all of those things. If you try to do them all, you're probably going to wear out. So listen to the Spirit's prompting and who you talk to and when. And I guarantee he will bring those conversations to the forefront. And these are just, I do want to hear your thoughts about this at the end, because I think we have a lot to listen to one another about and teach one another. But just think about these people in our local community. So your friends, how do you communicate with them? Do you communicate with them? If you haven't heard from them in a while, are you listening to their walk? Who are they? Are your friends, do they look like you? Do they go to the same places you go to? Of course they will to some degree. But are you creating spaces in your life to have friends that aren't just like you? Maybe this week you have a political conversation with someone that doesn't think like you, and you actually listen to try to find something that you can find a common place on. When you're with your friends, what do you talk about? Do you talk about the same old things? Do you talk about things that are, that matter to life? And again, sometimes the best conversations are about sports, and then you eventually get to that place of seeing the holy even in that. But again, you're not going to know that, and you're not going to know how to steer that conversation if you're not listening to the Lord first. And if you're like, man, I don't have any conversations like that at all, what can you do to change that? And who do you know that does that well that you can follow? She's not here, so I'll brag on her, but Leah Valley, she's really good at this. She's really good at finding people she has nothing in common with and walking up, and they are friends for life. And I noticed that, and I just started following her because that intimidated the heck out of me. And then it became not so scary. So find somebody that doesn't find it scary and latch onto them maybe. What about the needy in your community? I know in our neighborhood, even right now, I was driving last night and there was a pile of suitcases on the side of the road. Like, we've got a lot of homeless in our neighborhood right now. Is your ear to the ground as it pertains to your campus, workplace, customers, where there might be some people that need something? I mean, especially in the wake of the hurricane, we can definitely probably think of opportunities. I had messaged Avery because I know that Cade works with Families First, and like we have somebody in our midst that, you know, has his hand on the needy in the community. So like we need to listen to you in order to say what can we do to help. So when we get to that part, I would love to hear a little bit more. And then and then organizations. Are there people like Cade's organization that are putting the world back together? Like, how can we just partner with them? Is that somebody you give money to, you give time to? Listening to your community and being with the least of these is not always easy. And so make it easy on yourself. Don't try to reinvent the wheel when people are already doing that. That's how you lock arms with your community, is you don't presume to go, I'm going to go off and pioneer this all by myself. Not when somebody's already doing it well. So how can you be humble enough to ask for help in that space? And we can talk about that too when we get to the discussion part of the talk this morning, because I would love to hear your thoughts. All right. How do we listen to God about missions? This is something very near and dear to mine and Andy's hearts. Like I said, he works for a mission organization. We have tried to go on the mission field a handful of times. We clearly haven't made it. But that's okay, because I think in my previous life of faith, if you went on the mission field, you got another gold star and you were better. And that's just not true. And we've stayed home in America. And sometimes I ask God, are we supposed to be here? And I'm glad that we are, because I think there were circumstances in our life that we needed to be in the United States for. And I also think God has brought the nations to our doorstep, literally our family's doorstep. And then we have so many opportunities living in America that we just don't take advantage of sometimes. So we need to put our ear to the ground. What is God saying to us in missions? What does missions look like after deconstruction or in deconstruction? Flip over to Matthew 9. I feel like this is a good succinct look at missions as Jesus would call it out. Somebody read verses 35 through 38, please. Matthew 9.
And Jesus went throughout all cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom and healing every disease and every affliction. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them, because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into this harvest.
Thanks, Gabe. 4 verses, and there's so many things that you could talk about with missions there. He went into all the cities and villages. He went into the synagogues. He proclaimed the gospel. He healed diseases. He healed afflictions. He had compassion. He saw them as sheep without a shepherd. And then he said, you better pray. Like, you could take all of those, any of those, but what is your spot in putting the world back together and fulfilling God's mission to people that need to hear it? It is the sick. It is the harassed and helpless. It is the world. It's not just here. And there's multiple places in the Bible you can look and see where God's people are talking to him and listening to each other about missions. If you think about Acts 13, when the first missionaries were called out, they brought a bunch of different people, diverse people together, and they prayed and they listened to the Holy Spirit. In Acts 15, they did not know what to do about bringing the Gentiles into the fold, but they listened to one another. They considered what God was already doing, and then they joined with God in that work. Listen to the people around you, and listen to your friends, and listen to the field. And I say that because Andy works with a lot of different fields internationally. But I would love to hear when we get to the part where we discuss, like, what does missions look like to you now? Like, after some of us have just been through kind of like the Southern Baptist, like, you've got to go out and reach all these unreached people groups, which, again, do we still do that? What does that look like? What is your part in missions? Is it praying to send missionaries on the field? Do you find somebody like Andy and say, what are you guys doing? How can we get behind you? And when you meet somebody that has another religion than you, conversations like, do you immediately tell them on Jesus, or do you listen? Do you find the commonalities? one of my dearest friends and our neighbor, and I know the Lord did this, put us side by side. She's Hindu. And Andy and I talk about her a lot because if I'm honest, I'm like, is she not going to heaven? She's like one of the best people that I know. And she prays. I know she prays to like a lot of false gods. And I'm not going to say she doesn't know better because she knows about Jesus. But what does that look like? Like, I don't know. And am I generally like scared for her soul because she does pray to all these false gods? Do I try to like Jesus juke her and like every time I see her just constantly shove Jesus down her throat? Do I tell her she's wrong? Am I confident? Like what? I have so many questions. And so when we get to that discussion part, I'd love to know if you find yourself in the same position. And Andy and I, right or wrong, have decided like God knows her heart. Like our job is to be her good neighbor and is to be her good friend. And if Jesus presents the opportunity to tell her why Jesus is different. And the beautiful thing is he has done that time and time and again. And she's told me, no one's ever explained Christianity to me before. Can I just ask you questions? And I'm like, absolutely. Can I ask you questions about Hinduism? Because I don't know. What are the common grounds? And I don't know what Jesus is going to do with her. I do believe that if I'm faithfully praying for her and that if she's faithfully seeking God somehow, like he can take care of that. And I think the difference in listening to God and people now in missions is that I don't feel this responsibility and weight to save them, to mark that box off. It's more about the person than the project. And I'm not responsible for the outcome. Like Jesus created them. He's going to see them on to their eternity. And I don't know what that looks like. And that's really none of my business. Now, ask me 10 years later and I might tell you something different. But I know that I'm called to love and I know that I'm called to talk and I know that I'm called to listen to her, not a project of her or a project of Hinduism. But with all that being said, what can you do to listen to people that are in different places than you or in different cultures? Sometimes it's very intimidating to go to, I don't know, a neighbor's house that's Muslim. What are they going to cook for you? Are you allowed to do certain things? Are you allowed to eat pork? What's it get? You know, all these different things. That is scary. But they just want to be your friend. Like, just go be their friend. Just do what Jesus did. Break bread with people. Go out to people. Listen to them. Ask you questions and answer them as best you can. But how can you go if called? How can you go places, listen to people? What is your purpose? One of the beautiful things we have now is technology. And I still get messages from people that we went to see on mission trips. And I try not to break those because there was a reason we went in the beginning. And again, maybe I just wouldn't go and just constantly pound Jesus down their throat, but we're still friends. So they message me at 2 a.m. their time and I wake up and message them back. And then sometimes we can find a time to talk. But there's a lot of different ways to connect with people across the world now that there never were before. And you were born in this time for a certain reason. So what are you going to do with that? And technology is a great way to participate in missions and in the gospel. All right. So hold that one. Keep your thoughts on topic there for discussion because I want to hear everything you have to say about that. We're going to talk about nature. I'm a little selfish about this one because this one's one of my favorites. I think also because in my former walk of faith, it was almost like, oh, you know, you don't spend money on animals. The world's going to burn and don't worry about it. Just use everything up and don't, you know, you can't be a tree hugger and love the Lord too. And I'm learning to find out that, man, I commune with God so much more in nature than I have over the past several years because I didn't really allow myself to do that. I kept them very separate worlds. But I love being outside. I love spending time with nature. I get very geeked out by looking at trees turning, wondering how they do that, why they do that, how they can do that the same every year. Animals completely geek me out. I just think they're awesome that God gave us something to kind of empathize with us that we also have to take care of. So I didn't know where to go with the nature topic because you could go in lots of different ways. We could talk about how the government controls the weather and conspiracy theories. And I could absolutely do that. But that's not where I went. I was waiting on May to get off the bus the other day. And so I have read and heard that if you just sit in nature for like 5 or 10 minutes and you're still, that nature will start to move around you. You know, before you might be seen as a threat. So birds are going to take off, animals are going to run like little rabbits and things. But if you sit and you kind of become part of it, it will happen around you. They don't really pay attention to you. So I was sitting, I'm waiting on May at literally about 5 or 10 minutes in our front yard. We're not out in a forest or anything, but I observed how many animals came to sit with me while I was there for 5 minutes. There were small ants about the size of, I don't know, maybe an inch long. No, that's too big. Maybe like a centimeter. And then there were larger ants that could have eaten the smaller ants. They came along. Same place. A small spider in our garden. An orange butterfly flitted by. A stink bug walked across the sidewalk. And I was like, why are you here? Can you find somewhere else to go? A house finch came to our bird feeder. And there were a murder of crows. If you didn't know what a group of crows are, they're called murders. I feel like we've had this conversation here at church one time before. I couldn't see them because they were in the trees, but they were above my head. So I wrote those categories of animals down, and I went back inside and wrote down some statistics about those animals. So just bear with me. I had Andy be my guinea pig, and he didn't fall asleep. So if he didn't fall asleep, you're not going to fall asleep. So hang in there. So when I thought about the ants, here's some facts about ants you probably didn't know. There's 12,000 species of ants. They can live up to 30 years. A single ant can carry 50 times its body weight, and they often group together so they can move more as a group. Ants don't have ears, but they listen by feeling vibrations through their feet. What about butterflies? They have eyes made of 6,000 lenses. Their wings are actually clear. We see the colors and patterns made by the reflections on the scales that cover them. The skipper butterfly is so fast it can outpace a horse. The crows, if you've never learned about crows, I'm going to read you some fun facts about crows. Again, pretty exciting. All right. The crow's intelligence is on par with chimpanzees, and these guys just live above our heads in the sky. Crows can carry grudges for generations. So listen to this story. A team of researchers at the University of Washington ran an experiment where they captured American crows in nets wearing a caveman mask, then released them back on campus. When the researchers later walked across campus wearing the same mask, the crows scolded and dive-bombed them. More than 10 years later, after capturing just 7 crows, more than half of the crows on campus still raised the alarm at the sight of a caveman mask. Smart. Crows have funerals and wakes. When an American crow finds the dead body of another crow, it will call out an alert to all the other crows in the area, who will gather together and begin to make a ruckus among themselves. Researchers think that the behavior helps crows communities learn about potential threats together. Crows have communal living and can live up to 5 generations together at a time. I say all those things about crows and about butterflies and about spiders and ants and all the little creatures that I sat with for 5 minutes that day, just to remind us how big God is. And if he makes a butterfly with 6,000 lenses, don't you think he can take care of your problem? And don't you think he can take care of the problem of missions, and that he can take care of my neighbor that I don't know where her soul's going to go? Like, listening to nature is an avenue to worship to God. And if you're like me, I just don't slow down enough to listen to God. A couple of other things that I didn't bring up were, that was just the little animals that I was around in those 5 minutes. That didn't even begin to talk about the nutrients in the soil that have basically antidepressive properties if you just put your hands in them. It doesn't talk about the trees that I was around. There was a 2013 study from Scotland where they took a portable EEG unit on someone and stuck them in the forest for a while. And if you've ever had brain fatigue, like if you've left your job and you're like, I'm overstimulated, or if you've left school and you're like, I've talked to too many people, I'm overstimulated, go walk out in trees, because people that walk through a park-like area, their EEG showed that their brain waves became quieter. And that's just being among the trees. There's a Japanese practice called forest bathing. And what it does, it can, if you go on a trip to the forest versus a trip to like Chicago in an urban area, you have these killer cells in your body that will come to life to fight for your immune system. If you go out in the forest and you smell all the woodland essential oils from the trees, your natural killer cell activity will spike. It has anti-cancer protein properties, and these immune-fighting chemicals and cells can spike and last for more than 7 days after you leave the forest. I mean, God made the world to protect us, and he made us to protect the world. If we get into the whole political side of how many species we've killed of trees, of animals, maybe when you listen to nature, you are sparked to action to, like, plant a garden or save the bees or whatever. Like, that's not the point of listening to nature, is to become political about it. The point of it is to worship God and to see if you're called to action in any way. There are ways to help the planet, and I think that's great. I definitely have paid more attention to recycling since I've, had a shift of faith and kind of listened to God a little bit more in nature. But the other thing about it is nature is great, but there's people here that want to talk about it. Like, I have a neighbor and she does not believe in Jesus, but she's a scientist. And so when the hurricane hit, she and I were talking about it, and she has a house in Florida too. And we were talking about that. And I said, I really hate that climate change is, contributing to really bad storms. And she was like, because she knows we're Christian, she was like, yeah, it's horrible. And I was like, I know, let's talk about it. And my sister too, she doesn't believe in Jesus, but she's an environmentalist. And I talked to her about the hurricane, and she said, I said, can you believe, like, we need to pay attention because a lot of what we're doing to the world is causing more storms and causing more tragedy. And she said, yeah, and I don't understand why people don't believe that. And I was like, yeah, I know. And so can your faith in Jesus and your paying attention and listening to nature be a bridge to people that do care about science, but also have discounted Christians for years? And on the flip side of that, if you have maybe a friend that thinks that all the environmental stuff is mumbo jumbo, maybe listen to them and find out where that comes from. Don't go in trying to prove your point about saving the trees if that's your thing. But maybe something happened to them in their walk that they just don't believe that God cares about nature, or that they don't believe that he, that it's worth saving. All of these scenarios, missions, community, nature, come back to what Blake's been talking about all these weeks, is humility, to listen to God and listen to others. And taking the time to slow down and actually open your ears and close your mouth a little bit. So that's what I'm going to do right now, because I can talk a long time. I appreciate you listening to me. I will share a couple books if you're interested, because I was going to read from them, and then I just didn't want to take everybody's time, especially if we wanted to talk. Practicing the Presence of God, very thin. I got it for $3 used. But it just talks about how you can hear God in the mundane. If you can't hear God while you're washing dishes or chopping vegetables, this will tell you how to do it. Animal Vegetable Miracle. I love this book. She's not a believer, I don't think, but there's times in this book she talks about nature and agriculture and food. If you want to find Jesus, look at food. That's a whole nother thing I could geek out on, but the way he made food to feed our bodies is really, really cool. So that's a great one. Oh, this is also one of my favorites. It's an Advent book, and this lady in Michigan wrote it, and she just looked at the animals in her hemisphere, like up in her part of the world, and she wrote pages on how she can worship God just by learning a little bit about each of the animals, which is really cool. This is the best book on listening ever. And if we have time at the end, I will close by reading it to us, because it's helped me more than anything. And it was from the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. So we got it free for May or June. I can't remember. I think it was May. But yeah, it's the best. Was it May? Yeah, it was the best book on listening. So with that being said, I thought we could break down our conversations, our discussions in the 3 categories of community, missions, and nature. So as it pertains to community, what has worked for you guys in listening to community? What hasn't worked? Does anybody have anything they want to share about how to listen to your community? And Kay, this is your time to shine. If there's anything that we can learn from the community.
I really enjoyed working there. It was one of the things that I had struggled like most of the time since I've been working, like finding a place that actually had had like a purpose, like a meaning. It felt like I was doing something good for the community, and it was hard for me to do that because I worked as like a bank teller for a while, and I know there's opportunities there, but it was really hard for me to like make a connection. I'm like asking people if they want to open a checking account as opposed to like people, get off drugs. So it feels like
different.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose both would be detrimental, but yeah. So I really enjoy working there, and I think I've learned a lot too being there, and yeah, like I've had a chance to meet a lot of different people, like especially like our clients and stuff, people who are going through things, and like seeing people that you're like, oh, you know, they came into our program a year ago, and now they're somewhere else completely different a year later. And so it's been fulfilling for me, and I think like when we were talking about missions too, like a lot of times it's like you always think about it has to be outside of your country or you know outside of your continent or whatever, but this one was like you know literally in my backyard pretty much, and seeing like the impact and stuff that it has is super cool. And I mean we just happened to find it because Avery's boss said she's really good friends with Lisa, the founder of Family Street, and so I think for me, I mean, my like footstep into community service too, like a nonprofit, and it I feel like I needed that structure of being at a place that already had like things moving and stuff, so I could just kind of fit right in. So for like my experience has been super helpful is to kind of get involved like in a structure that was already established and doing stuff. So
Do you want to like quickly share what things it is?
oh yes.
Just for people who don't know.
Yeah, basically it long story short, people, let's say if someone gets caught and they're abusing, so have substance abuse or whatever. So they'll go to court and they'll have this whole thing. And what we do is we sort of step in to kind of be like a middle door, so they don't necessarily have to go straight to prison. So depending on like the number of offenses and stuff like that, and what kind of drugs and stuff it was, they can choose, like we can kind of step in and kind of help them get like on a 12-step program to recover, so they don't have to go to prison. So once you become incarcerated, it's like a whole cycle of like you go in, you get out, you go back in. It's really hard to break that. So we try to like step in and help them and bring them into our program as opposed to them go straight to prison. So, and a lot of times we'll go with our clients, have like weekly court meetings and stuff. So we go and try to advocate for them. And the judges too are with, so we partner with the judges as well. So everybody wants what's best for them. But yeah, we try to be that middle option so they don't have to go straight to prison. It kind of breaks that cycle of incarceration. So.
Are there ways that like us lay people can get involved, or is it?
Right now, because a lot of our funding comes from the state, so right now it's there's not like a whole lot of opportunities, just because they're really stingy about like volunteer wise and stuff like that. We used to take a lot of volunteers that we haven't been able to as of recently, but I know we're connected with a lot of different organizations like in the state, so. Yeah, I'm trying to think. There's like the big one we're connected with is like the Tennessee Department of Mental Health and stuff. So that they have organizations and stuff that they can connect with too. Yeah.
It's not we're affiliated with any kind of religious thing.
No, it's faith-based evidence or a faith-based curriculum, but there's a lot of people there who aren't like outspoken meaning scholars, you know, they're just there, which has been super helpful for me too, just like meeting people like who aren't necessarily, who may not be Jesus followers, but are doing the same things that I'm doing, which is just trying to make an impact of goodness in the world. So,
But if you're not sharing the gospel with them, then
right.
they will be lost.
Right.
That's the rub, though.
Yeah, it
I mean,
is.
there's probably a 50 statement, a clear statement about like feeding people, but they're gonna have a full belly on the way to hell or something like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
For sure.
So it's kind of like, I think this is the rub of listening to our community or missions or whatever. It's like you can listen all the way to hell. You know what I'm saying? And at some point, you have to get them to agree with you. You know, which I think is helpful. You bringing up all these things. These are my questions.
Yeah, like do you have to get them?
Okay.
I think Jesus can take care of that, but it's going to take us listening to him to make sure that, not make sure, again, there's not like a grading system, I don't think, but yeah, just find the opportunities where they are. It might just be giving somebody a meal and never saying a word, Yeah. What else? Anybody have any other best practices for listening to your community? And what about missions? And Andy, this is your time to shine if you want to share what you do. And
Stand up.
yeah. Don't talk about conspiracies. Talk about missions.
No, it's real similar. Yeah, I think one of the big things that I've learned over the last few years is, man, just kind of leaned on is this, honestly, just kind of looking at Jesus' life and how he treated. I mean, you would think that if anybody's going to be the quintessential missionary, it'd be Jesus. But like, there's the way he interacted with people, the way he was content to just kind of say his thing and walk away, leave you thinking, leave you wondering. You would think again, Jesus was, if it was all on the shoulders, that he'd be just here, there, and everywhere, getting this, sailing to here, sailing to there, trying to get to this place, that place, but he's very much confined in this one little geographical spot, content to, to know some people and not know others, and so it's just, just throw that out there. I think just, I've obviously over the last few years, we at times, you can wrestle with the whole, like, gosh, and how do we balance working with this, recognizing that the extreme version of this is all the things you guys mentioned, which is, you've got this one message, and if you don't, people are dying every day because you're not sharing this message with them. And I think where I've come to, a place for myself is like, being okay to work alongside people who still hold those views. Again, I think the dangers of shit when you're shifting is that you find yourself just in a different bubble. And I didn't want to just move bubbles, or we didn't want to just move bubbles. But for us, it's trying to like recognize that like there's an essence of hope that I think everybody needs. And there are places like where Abby said, there's even places here, there's people that don't have hope, something to hope in. And I think that's what we can offer is like, again, not trying to like save people from, get people to heaven versus send, people going to hell per se, but just hope. And for now and for eternity. And eternity includes, learn this from the Jewish way of life, but like eternity also means the here and now. And so like for a lot of these same places, they're impoverished, they're places where there's high levels of substance abuse, domestic abuse, and all those things are happening at once. So it's more than just heaven and hell at that point. It's just being a kind, decent person and offering yourself as a means of help. And so I don't know.
But like Avery told Kay, tell them what you do and who you work for. Like we need, like, if we're gonna partner with Mission, like you do that already. So
yeah. Well, yeah. Send International. It's a missions organization. It is trying. It's a sending agency, so they send missionaries to 25 different countries, including North America. We have teams here in strategic cities and stuff as well. But yeah, the idea again is to live amongst people whose culture is not our own, and to really get to know them, to hear their story, and love and care for them, and show Jesus to them in a way that, as Abby was kind of alluding to, may disrupt what they previously understood Christianity to be. And that's what I've seen from our neighbor, just the way that there's this presumption that everybody knows what Christianity is. And some have, but they don't understand it, or they've only understood it in the way that it's been presented to us. So there's an opportunity for us to be able to like correct those things and be able to say like, hey, actually, it's not all like this. I can remember being in Indonesia, and it was right after 2016 Trump was elected, and one of the person asked me, they were like, so does your country hate us because we're Muslim? And I was like, well, no. I was like, there's certain people that don't understand, and we're scared of what we don't know. It's like, but as a whole, like that's not us, and we're not all, but all they hear is the loudest voices get the attention, especially as you go around the world, like the way that media is consumed, it is the loudest voices. And so there's opportunities for us to come along in smaller ways and correct those understandings or broaden those understandings in ways I think are very helpful. So we don't do that. We don't get a chance to do that if we just sit that out. So,
Thank you. Anybody else have anything on missions or? Any thoughts on nature or connecting with nature? I know we better wrap up soon. I know our little guys are like, this has gone too long.
11:30.
All right. My baby is saying we've gone too long. All right. So Blake, what do you want to do? Close this up. All right. All right. Any additional thoughts? Otherwise we'll pray. And what are we doing for dinner this week?
It's Halloween, so.
It is Halloween.
No, Thursday.
No, we are doing. We're doing Jesus week.
Did you not go through it?
Yeah.
We could do something.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Oh, gosh. That wasn't against Taylor, guys.
Come on,
Yeah,
everyone,
no,
everyone
we were
point
just
it to
thinking it would be fun to like, if anyone with kids, we have a really great trick-or-treating neighborhood too, and so
Oh,
if anyone wants to,
maybe
like,
we could like.
I also want to see if
together.
Mike is asking.
We could like, I don't know, like bring soup or something.
Yeah.
And dip or something. fun.
Yeah,
I
Jordan was like, I'll bring ghost cookies.
Aw.
So
feel like that'd be so fun.
I think it would be too. We were supposed to go to my family's house and run away, so we were like, we want people to like walk around the neighborhood with and stuff. So
Well, we would love that. 'cause we love the neighborhood.
I'll post in the group meeting, and if anyone is free and wants to do that, then we can do a little something.
Well, that's very nice.
Just so you know, we don't celebrate Halloween. So if you're coming for Halloween.
We're just dressing up and we're gonna walk
Just
around.
dressing
We're
up,
dressing
go
up
to the
and-
candy and dress up, but not for Halloween.
Can't call it that.
Porridge, pumpkins, but it's not
Yeah.
Halloween.
Okay.
And when you not trick or treat, talk to one of your neighbors and make friends and listen to your community.
Right.
I'm pretty sure Halloween has a very Christian background, origin. I think it's it's very Christian. I should have thought about that before I said it because I need to.
Yeah,
Research it and let us know.
It had
something
it
behind
had
it.
something to do with Thanksgiving, but it was like it wasn't Thanksgiving. It was almost like what we were talking about. Like, no, we don't celebrate Halloween. We just dress up and go get candy for. That's basically what they were doing, and then they just made Halloween. Halloween.
Someone should
I've heard
Google
of
it
devil
and
worship.
report back.
It's like all Halloween. GTP.
Just use Google Gemini. Never been wrong.
Yeah.
Google Gemini is all. Never trust that. It's the Google's AI. It's terrible.
Yeah, but, like-
Yeah, like when you search something on the top thing, yeah, it is always wrong.
And then it said, yeah.
Is it
Not always, but it's like very.
I know. I'm like, ooh.
It's a pretty bad
Like
source.
summarize.
I'm sure it is, but AI was raised with
Yeah.
something.
All right. We're digressing. Let's pray first. All right. Let's pray first. All right. I'm going to pray for it. God, thank you so much for this community and that we can listen to one another and that we have just even experts in our community about things that we need to tap into. Father, we ask for your guidance. We pray that you give us listening ears to help others. And I just pray that you create conversations this week that we can listen, Father, and have us only speak when you prompt us. And God, thank you for the kids and for Jordan and Andrew for watching them. And please just go before us and protect all of us and those that aren't here to be with us this week. Just bring them back when it's time for them to come back. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
If you guys interested, that's some information there.
What is it, Google
Should I
Drive?
send them a team? All right.
All Saints Day and All Hallows Eve. Halloween's name comes from All Hallows Eve, the evening before All
did
Saints
know that.
Day,
All Hallows Eve.
Christian festival on November
I said that 5 minutes ago. I said that 5 minutes ago.
Sorry, I was.
All Souls Day.
You're so sweet. Also,
No one else cares. Those things I'm
He was just smiling. And I was like,
I'm not driving.
you happy?
What's that?
Oh, did you want to go happy?
Thanks everybody for caring.
Yeah.
So a week for the time we have the Christian.
It's actually
Christian.
Yeah, Christmas has one of the pagan.
Oh,
Wow. Everyone,
Yeah, literally.
gather around.
You are, you're boiling in cancer. Yes, you should probably. People heard you say that. Andy's
Well, especially when he starts
It's
eating
just-
teeth, it's just
Yeah.
getting
Oh, it's just gonna get so much worse. Now, she would drool and spit up. So I was like,
He's really
I'll
steady.
help you get.
Maybe next week I'll talk about Halloween and